G'day, and I begin by saying my name is George, and I'm going to tell you about today's message of hope, dated 24th of May, 2026. Richard Charles Sproul appeared on my YouTube feed quite recently, asking a question that gave me this idea. Now, in his video, he said, if it is true that God from all eternity saves his own elect, and nothing's going to change that, then why should we be involved in evangelism? Now, before we go any further, I don't know the man and I won't attack him. Not fair. But I'll say plainly that I believe the predestination argument has got it all wrong. I'm not a Calvinist, in fact I'm against it too. That's just my own personal view. You can study that in the Bible and make your own conclusion. But I try to find something useful even in the things I might disagree with. And in that sentence, that is, the questions he puts on the table, I found something that I want to give my opinion on. Yes, because I had heard the cousin of that cousin before, that question I'm talking about. Now, I didn't hear it in a lecture hall. I never went to theological college, nothing like that. But in a hotel corridor. Let me explain. My first full-time job after I graduated from university, I was pushing a trolley. Where? At a hotel in a CBD. And I was getting very comfortable not asking about some of the questions. Let me tell you about a man I knew at one of the churches. I attended some, 30 years back, perhaps. Now, he was a nice-mannered man and often wanted to connect with people. You know, the helpful type. Average Joe helpful type. But something went quiet when the conversation turned to work. Because there was no urgency in his voice. In the conversation, there doesn't seem any hunger in him to look for work. I don't think he was unwell, unfit to work, and definitely wasn't elderly. He just, let's just say, wasn't pursuing it the way a man with those gifts probably should have been. I don't know his full background. Anyway, now I've never probed deeply with him because he felt kind of like a question that would cost a friendship. And I didn't want to do that. And then, of course, I left that church and that was that. I genuinely don't know how his story ended, so I can't give you a conclusion. What I do know is that I recognized something in him that I had recognized in myself because I had done my own version of it. There you go, I've got to eat my own humble pie here. Because the same drift, or in many cases people say very little aim, if you want to call it that, it's just like the song Nowhere Man by the Beatles. And in this context, this is what the Apostle Paul writes to the church in Thessalonica. You find it in the second letter, chapter 3, verses 10 to 12. Allow me to read this for you. For even when we were with you, we would give you this command. If everyone is not working or not willing to work, let him not eat. For we hear that some among you walk in idleness. Not busy at work, but busy bodies. Whew. Now, such persons we command and encourage in the Lord Jesus Christ to do the work quietly and to earn their own living. I don't think that was spoken in the context of a society where they have social benefits. So you just got to earn your living, right? And that's fair. Now, Paul doesn't soften that. There's no pastoral cushioning. No carefully worded qualifications. He just said if you don't work, you don't eat. Put it bluntly. Because it's the bluntest instruction in the New Testament on this subject. Yeah. And it was written to a church. To Christians. To people who prayed. People who believe in God. People who presumably expected God to provide. Maybe he will, maybe he won't. Now again, I want to thank all my subscribers here. Thank you for your support. Like I said, I do read your comments. I have responded to every single one of them. Keep them coming. I'm going to encourage you, if you haven't subscribed, please do so. Give me encouragement by giving a thumbs up. And share these videos far and wide. Let's get back to the story, yeah? Okay, so here is where the Sproul question, Richard R.C. Sproul, come from. Right? And it becomes useless to me, even though I disagree with where his theology lead. The logic of hard predestination, taken to its endpoint, can seem to suggest, well, if God has already decided who is saved, then my evangelism is either redundant or decorative, showing people off. Richard himself rejects that conclusion. He raises the question precisely to expose the flaw in it. He goes on, meaning God ordains the end, but he also ordains the means. He works for our obedience, not around it. Okay, so the stewardship argument is identical, isn't it? Sovereignty doesn't cancel the means, it works through them. I'm going to say these things very slowly, okay? Because yes, God is sovereign over your provision. Remember in the Bible, we've read that he clothes the lilies, because that's so true. But it also gave you a mind, maybe a university degrees, I'm not sure. And perhaps a set of skills the market has already told you it values. Okay, whether you're a carpenter, plumber, data analyst, we all have skills. The question is not whether God could provide without your effort. No. The bigger question is whether he has called you to be part of how he provides. And provide for your family and through your family into the world. Right? So here's the thing. Money earned faithfully is money available to give. Absolutely. Every dollar that goes into God's kingdom, your church, a family in need, and a ministry doing work you believe in, starts as an income. Now, you cannot give what you haven't first earned or been given. God doesn't need your money to establish his will on this earth. That is a fact as well. But he invites you to participate in it. Christians, that is. And I don't want you to treat this as a burden, but see it as extraordinary privilege. The opposite polarizing end is poverty, right? It's the grinding where the options are removed from your life. It's the anxious version of it, pardon me. And it has a particular way of shrinking your world. It doesn't just take your money. It takes your attention. It saps up your energy. It drains your capacity for generosity and service and the kind of clear-headed thinking good stewardship will require. Now, I'm not saying God can't work through poverty. He can and he does. It's written throughout the Bible, right? When Jesus is around. But given a choice between a Christian who can give freely and one who cannot, I think I know which one has more room to move. You do too. Productivity is not a distraction from God's work. Right? God intended us for work and be happy with it. He did that with the first man, Adam, to work in the garden. Okay? For most of us, most of the time, it is the path into it. Now, I cleaned hotel rooms for a year and a half. Like I said, it's my first full-time job after university. And I want to say plainly, off the bat, there is nothing wrong with that work. It is honest and it is necessary to do work. But I had a degree, you see. I put money and time into it, 3 years plus. So I had options I wasn't pursuing. Regardless what the economy was saying. At the time, we were in recession. Well, and somewhere in those 18 months, I stopped asking whether this was where I was supposed to be. Now I have to tell you, the job did have one genuine perk. I did like it. Every meal at the staff canteen cost only $2. It was because it was heavily subsidized. I think they didn't want staff to leave the premise look for food and then missed out and been late back to work. I do have good collection of it. The food was really good, cooked by chefs. Good enough that I was never entirely miserable about the situation, which, looking back, was probably part of the problem. Now, the catch was a 30-minute lunch break only. Not quite enough time to properly work through every menu item on offer. But I did my best. And boy, after eating, did I want to have a rest. And that is what comfortable looked like from the inside. It didn't ooze any suffering, and obviously nothing was failing, right? Just a $2 meal and a decent food, and a month after month, deferral of the one question I wasn't asking. What am I building? This is what I'm leading to. Then a friend of mine, Michael, he had a chat with me and asked it directly. What was I working towards? Was I using what I study? Did I have a plan even? He wasn't harsh. He was a brother in Christ. It was the opposite. He was honest. He was caring. And something about being seen clearly by someone who cared too much to leave me where I was, hey, that moved me. Right? After all these years, what he said still stuck with me. Now, after that conversation, God opened the door. It wasn't immediately. It was my first ever computing contract role. And from that one contract came a career I couldn't have decided if I tried. Everything's under God's hands. But I still got to try, right? I still got to make an effort. Yeah? IT support, contracting, then everything that follow. All of it, I would say, traces back to that one conversation with a man who cared enough to not let me stay comfortable. Now, Michael went on to build a genuinely successful career himself, and he was still humble about it the last time we spoke. And I think those things are connected. Okay. Yes, I never asked him, how can I achieve making more money? But that was enough to get me started. Friends, I want to ask you something directly. Is there a corridor you've grown comfortable in? It's not because you're incapable, right? I don't think it's because the door isn't there, but because comfortable, it's easier than asking what you're actually building. Okay? Paul's command was to a church, to people who believe. You know those people who believe, they also prayed and they told themselves God will provide. Sure, God will provide. And we're using that expectation as a reason not to contribute to it. Now that's not faith. That's just drift, aimlessly wearing the clothes of faith. Yeah, if you have the capacity to earn, and I'm guessing most people watching this, they do, then earning is not an optional stewardship. It is the real stewardship here, guys. It's how you participate in what God is doing rather than watch it from the corridor. So here's Paul's instruction again in case you missed it the first time. If anyone is not willing to work, let him not eat. Believe me, that principle is very evident in Southeast Asia, right? They're not well known for, social work. Compassionate to people who doesn't work. Okay, now that's not a gentle suggestion for a man with a lot of patience for comfortable drift. Michael saw something in me before I saw it in myself. He didn't need to provide any theological arguments. He just asked the question I had been avoiding because I was getting comfortable. And because he asked. A career happened. Family was provided. Gifts were put to work that were running to waste in a hotel corridor between the trolley and the canteen. Oh yeah. Now sovereignty doesn't mean it makes the means redundant, does it? It works through them. I don't know how my friends, like I said, didn't seem to have any urgency to work, how he ended. I wonder sometimes what he's doing these days. But I know how mine did. And it started with someone who cared enough not to leave me comfortable. So my friends, is there Michael in your life asking you the question you've been avoiding? Because I want the very best for you. So this is my message of hope for today. I hope you enjoy it. Don't forget to subscribe, like, and share the video. Take care. I'll see you tomorrow. Bye-bye.